What is this Docker? If we take a quick step back and try to understand what really Docker is all about, Docker, when we say Docker, there are two things. Docker Inc. is the company which came out with Docker. And we also have Docker as a technology, as a software, which provides you the platform for getting the code on your laptop into the cloud in a very, very easy way. It helps you assemble your applications and all of its components and deploy and run those applications inside your container. Docker as a software helps you do all of that. A little bit of history of how Docker came into play and how these containers are getting popular. So even before Docker made containers popular, way in early 2013-14, there existed technology in your Linux kernel. Various different contributors have contributed towards the Linux kernel development out there. There was Google, which was making use of containers even before Docker made containers popular, and they contributed a lot to the kernel related technologies around Docker, like a component called as C group. There was Red Hat, which gave us namespaces. There was IBM, which gave us in 2007-8 a library called as LXC. There existed these features in your Linux kernel. So now when I told you it gives you that isolation at the operating system level, it creates a box in which you can drop your application. But how does that happen? How does that happen? Is there are different kernel technologies. To name a few, we're not going to go deep dive into those, but we should know what's going on and how does it work. Is there are few technologies which you can Google if you want to, called as Linux namespaces, C groups, capabilities, union file system, chroot. To name a few, these were the few Linux kernel features what Docker made use of. And what happened is, the history behind this is Docker Inc. Before it was called as Docker Inc., it was called as .cloud. The job of them, that company .cloud, what they did, they was platform as a service provider, and whatever service they were offering, they were running and deploying that on those Linux containers. That was kind of a secret sauce. Only the people, not many people knew, and few organizations like Google have been using it for quite some time, like Red Hat and IBM and all of them. This .cloud was also making use of them to manage these kernel features and talk to the LXC and get those building blocks and create those isolation, create those boxes, which would then give you that separate isolation, give you a separate host name, an IP address, file system. What Docker did, they came out with their own tool. Sorry, what .cloud did. And they nicknamed this tool as Docker. Docker as an English word, it's dock worker, as in somebody who loads and unloads your ships, your cargo ships. Dock worker, two words combined together and then made it as Docker. And Docker realized the popularity of this, the convenience of this, and they gave you a simple CLI tool, making use of which you can talk to the underlying kernel features and create these facets of isolation and create those containers with simple commands. Docker realized what they were doing, inventing, and that's how the technology was born. They renamed themselves from .cloud. From .cloud, they renamed themselves to Docker Inc. And they got rid of their platform as a service side of the business, and they focused on bringing containers to the mainstream IT. And if you really look at it, they've been immensely popular and immensely successful in doing so. There's a popular blog out there. I'm sorry, I forgot to put that on the slide. And if you just go look at Docker in numbers, in the Q2 of last year alone, and so far from the time Docker has been around, Docker has a centralized place called as Docker Hub, where it places all of its images. What images are, we will talk about that in a minute though. There are more than 300 and it's close to 400 odd billion downloads. B for billion, that's the number of downloads of these images happened so far. In the Q2 of last year alone, we had close to 50 billion pulls. We have more than 12 million user accounts and more than 9 million repositories out there on the Docker app. That talks about the popularity, and Docker has been immensely popular and successful in bringing the main containers into mainstream IT. That is where we are here right now, trying to understand what this Docker is all about. Let's go take a look at the architecture. I understand the time what I've been given is a little less, so we will look at an architecture from the 10,000 feet view. All right, Docker, it makes use of the client server architecture. The client and the server, the simplest of the setup, is where both of them running on the same machine. You have the client, you have the server, both of them running on your same machine. Server, we call it as Docker daemon, Docker engine, Docker host, Docker itself, all of them means the same, which runs as a system service on your machine, is the one which is responsible for building your images, creating your containers, starting and managing your containers, creating your volumes, pushing and pulling your images. All of the hard work is taken care by your Docker daemon. Whereas client is a CLI, which lets you talk to your Docker daemon. Docker daemon exposes an REST API to which when you run your Docker commands like Docker create me a container, Docker build me an image, it's going to convert those commands into the REST APIs and talk to your Docker daemon behind the scene. Simplest to set up is both of them running together. But having said that, it's a client server architecture. You can have the client installed on your laptop and you have your data center somewhere in New York. We have your Docker host running there. That also works. From a remote client, you can talk to your remote Docker host and execute those commands. When you do so, it's the Docker engine, the Docker daemon, the Docker host is the one which is doing a lot of hard work. Traditionally earlier, Docker daemon used to be a monolith library. They kind of broke it down. So you might have heard terms like containerd, runc. Those are all the subcomponents of Docker daemon. Are we going to talk about that? No, time is not permitting, but that's how it's been modular and it's broken down. Long story short, you have client and your server. Client is the one which gives you the CLI. Our server is the one which does the hard work of creating and running your containers.
So guys, this was our expert from Team K21 Academy, and if in case you missed upon any concepts or if you want to dive deeper, then we have something really special for you. We have our free class on Docker and Kubernetes certification to get you higher paying jobs. And in this interactive session, we'll be learning about why learn containers, that is Dockers and Kubernetes. You'll be learning about the whole Docker container architecture. You'll be getting to know about some hands-on demo. You'll be getting to know the certifications regarding Kubernetes, CKA, CKS, and CKAD. And we do have Q&As along with a limited time gift. So if you want to enroll for this free class, all you have to do is just log on to k21academy.com/K8S02. And after that, you just have to click on book your free seat now. And after that, you just have to select an event date according to your availability, add your name, your email address, your phone number, and click on yes, save my seat. Moving ahead, you'll be seeing this kind of URL. You can add this URL to your calendars, and I'll see you in the free class. Till then, take care and keep learning.